a backpack rapper. Some of landlords, some of jams force. The sharks told me I was dead in the water. Till I spit that lead judge dead in the water. And now I'd rather be myself and keep my message in order. I realize that's...
All right, folks, B&B's Football Happy Hour, welcome. We are back. We're beaten. We're beautiful. As always, I'm Bobby.
Brian, glad to be back for lucky number 13 here, a day late, but definitely not $1 short. So,
yeah, and we apologize for that again. I know I posted it, but we apologize for being a day late. Just some scheduling conflicts, but we are good to go, and we are ready to roll.
Yep, summertime, so I think I talked to a few people that were on vacation and whatnot, so getting hard to get some people on here.
That's all right. We got some good guests on tonight. And Brian, we're going to start with our most underrated players, we think. So last week we talked about the most overrated players in the NFL. This week will be our most underrated players. Then we're going to talk some, I almost said Oakland. We're going to talk some Las Vegas Raiders. And we're going to talk a little Tennessee Titans after that. Tennessee Titans have played an AFC Championship game, surprisingly, last year. So I dug into them, Brian, and they are a very intriguing team, much more so than I thought before I really got in there and started digging down.
Yeah, I'm not that high on them this year. I mean, they have a good roster, but I think last year was sort of a fluke, so I don't expect them to – maybe a wild card at the best, in my opinion.
Well, we'll see what our returning guest, Michael Seff, thinks about those Tennessee Titans in a little bit. All right, Brian, why don't you go first on your underrated players? I feel like I go first a lot. I want to hear what you got.
All right, so my first guy I have here was on the worst team in the NFL. It's not a guy you hear a lot about unless you play fantasy football, in my opinion. So the first guy I got is Tyler Boyd. Just looking at his numbers, I mean, the Bengals, they were the worst team in the NFL. A.J. Green was out all year. Their offensive line was pretty garbage, I guess, last year. Now, he's one of the bright spots on that team. Him and Joe Mixon, I think, are pretty much the only guys I would probably take from the Bengals, the 2019 Bengals. But he ended up last year, he had the sixth most yards coming out of the slot, 661 yards. I think with Joe Burrow, I think he'll do even better. I mean, last year with a pretty bad team, he still had 90 catches for over 1,000 yards. Just not a guy you hear a lot about. I mean, I hear a lot about him from my guys that I play fantasy football with. But other than that, I mean, I'm not hearing anybody mention Tyler Boyd. I mean, he had more yards last year than Odell Beckham, Calvin Ridley, Deebo Samuel, Robbie Anderson, DK Metcalf. I mean, he's a guy I think should be a little more talked about, and he kind of just flies under the radar to me. I think just because of the team he's on. So he's going to be my number one pick for one of the most underrated guys in the NFL.
Hey, dude, I hear you on that. And that was such a good way to put it. I hear him. It's funny because you said Tyler Boyd, and I'm thinking to myself, well, he's not that, underrated. But you're right. It's only because I hear about him in fantasy, not in real life football. And I mean, AJ Green, who knows what's going to – obviously he's incredible, Hall of Fame caliber career. But he's coming back from a serious injury, and we don't know what's going to happen there. We don't know how he's going to play. We don't even know if he's going to be on the Bengals. I mean, they could ship him off. He's supposed to play on a franchise tag this year. I'm assuming he signed it today, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, the deadline to come up with a long-term contract was today. I don't believe that happened. So they could trade him, by training camp, a couple more weeks or before the season starts. So if something like that happens, or, if he gets traded, or if he doesn't come back from injury, maybe he just, doesn't play as well as he should. Tyler Boyd could be the number one receiver on the Cincinnati Bengals. So I agree with you. That's a good pick.
Yeah. I think, we both play a lot of fantasy football. So, yeah, I mean, I'm only hearing about him because of the guys I play fantasy football with. I mean, if you were to ask any other normal NFL fan, I mean, would you rather have, Tyler Boyd or Odell Beckham or Deebo Samuel? I mean, they're taking those guys all day. And I mean, when I looked into it, he had the better numbers. So he should be your pick, but I don't think he is most people's pick.
And he's a great slot guy too, because he's a bigger slot guy. Normally slot guys, you think they're smaller, quicker receivers, but he's a big guy. And a lot of times on NFL defenses, their slot corner, their nickel corner, they're one of the smaller guys. I mean, I know like Brandon Boykin was a great slot corner for a while, a few years ago. Was he 5'8"? And I only know him, Eagles time, and he went to the Steelers for a little bit, but
yeah,
those slot corners are a lot smaller. So you have a bigger receiver like Tyler Boyd that can create some serious mismatches with the defense. So that's a good one, man.
Yep. He's my first. Try to think outside the box a little bit here. Try to talk about some guys we have never brought up before. So figured he'd be a good one.
Thank you for the outside the box segue into mine, because my first guy is going to be Eric Weddle. And I'm starting with him because it might be a little controversial to throw a retired player out there, but he just retired this year. And I'm not completely convinced that he's finished with football. I wouldn't be surprised if another team, needs a safety, they suffer an injury, something like that, if they call him up, because he's going to be ready to go. Eric Weddle is one of those guys. He's always in shape. He's always ready to rock. He is a baller. And he can still play. I don't think there's any argument. I don't think there's any argument that Weddle isn't a great player, but I feel like his name is never mentioned when we talk about the best safeties in the league. You hear Jamal Adams, Malcolm Jenkins, Earl Thomas, Harrison Smith, Mika Fitzpatrick, and the list goes on and on before you ever hear Weddle's name. But Weddle's only missed 7 games in 13 seasons, which is tough to do when, you're playing a defensive position like safety. A lot of hits happen there, especially because he's had over 100 tackles 4 different times in his career. That's a lot of beat and bang. He even had over 100 tackles just last year. And he's always one of, if not the leading tackler on whatever team he's playing on. And his snap share is also incredible, which leads to, just adds to the durability comment I made earlier. Since 2012, he's played at least 93% of his team's plays, except for 2015. He did miss 3 games there, so obviously he's not going to play all of his, 93% of his team snaps if he missed some games. I don't know, the one thing that Saints and Eagles fans have always loved about the aforementioned Malcolm Jenkins is that he never comes off the field. Well, neither does Weddle. And for his career, he averages more tackles per game than Hall of Famers Brian Dawkins and Troy Polamalu. So I'm not sure why he's not constantly in the conversation for best safeties in the league.
Yeah, I mean, he's been up there for a while. I mean, I think he might have started playing out. It might have been just graduating high school. I mean, that was a while ago. I mean,
no kidding.
That's a long career. And like you said, I mean, I think last year he was on the Rams. So if he had
over 100 tackles.
Yeah. If he listens to our podcast, he probably knows they're going to suck next year. So he just retired. And then he'll come back on a team that's like a contender or something like that. He might not be out. So we'll see. But, yeah, I've always been a Weddle fan, and he's just never been maybe a little underappreciated, I guess. I mean, people just don't really kind of just take him for granted. And
yep. I mean, he's made some Pro Bowl, so he has some accolades under his belt. But I mean, even me, up until this week when I'm really digging into stuff, if you ask me who the best safeties in the league are,
yeah,
I'm not. I mean, that list I gave, I'd probably name all of those guys before I named Weddle, and I'd probably be wrong by doing it.
Yeah. So we didn't talk about this before, but that is going to be a great segue into my second underrated player in the NFL here. So I have another safety.
Are we just opening the door for each other this whole show?
Exactly. I mean, you've mentioned somebody I'm about to talk about here. So You got Weddle. Yeah, he's underrated. So earlier in the year, when all the teams are franchise tagging everybody, the Broncos franchised Justin Simmons. And I was like, I heard of him, but I was like, I mean, to be a franchise tag player, I mean, you got to be pretty damn good. So then when we were doing this show, I looked him up. Now, you mentioned Malcolm Jenkins. So Justin Simmons has the second longest active snap streak in the NFL of over 2,025 consecutive snaps.
Wow.
Trailing only Malcolm Jenkins. And last year, he allowed the lowest passer rating in coverage at 32.1%. So that's pretty tough to do, to be on the field pretty much every play and then to give up the lowest passer rating in the NFL as a safety. So when they first said we're going to franchise tag Justin Simmons, I really didn't know who he was, to be honest. I've heard the name, but I didn't know he was really that good of a player. And then when we were doing this, I was kind of looking into some stats, and I came across him. I mean, last year he had 93 tackles and 4 picks. I mean, that's pretty good for a safety. And, I mean, he's got the durability like you just mentioned before with Weddle. I mean, to play 2,000 consecutive plays, I mean, that has to be a couple of years worth of just being out there every snap. And then on top of that, I mean, he's allowing the lowest passer rating. So, I mean, it's pretty tough to do. So I was pretty impressed with that. And then I know last week you had mentioned the some AV of some players, and his AV was an 11 last year, which was pretty high
Double
for
digits.
safety, a defensive player. So,
yep.
I mean, to me, he doesn't get a lot of love, and it was pretty good because, I mean, you had just talked about some safeties, and, you know, he wasn't one of the ones you mentioned. And, you know, I think
he belongs on the list for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
I think he was an All-Pro this last year.
Yeah, I mean, when you dig into it, it's like everybody talks about the Minka Fitzpatricks and you know, Earl Thomases and all those guys that are kind of flashy, but I mean, this guy's he's just out there like Malcolm Jenkins, just doing his job, you know, making tackles, never coming out, and just doing his thing.
Yep, and I think Simmons was PFF's number 2 rated safety.
Was he? Okay,
yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Which, I mean, so according to them, they go to such depths and details with their ranking systems and everything they do. I mean, they watch every single play. So I have no idea who number 1 was, but to be ranked number 2, I mean, they think he's the second best safety in the entire National Football League, and they're pretty reputable. I know every NFL team uses PFF. Well, I mean, Bill Belichick might not, just because he's so prideful, but
he's smart.
Most NFL teams use PFF in some way, shape, or form to help evaluate players and, you know, see what they have and everybody else. So that is a legitimate accolade for Justin Simmons to have. Number 2 from PFF is,
like you said earlier. I mean, unless you were talking to a Broncos fan, like unless Daniel was on here again, I mean, he'd probably be the only person to mention him in a top 5 safety list, I would imagine. So
yeah, you're probably right. But obviously
he should be in there. Yeah, should be talked about more.
All right, buddy. In my book, you're 2 for 2, and I don't compliment you very often. All right, my number 2, Cole Beasley.
All right.
So Beasley, that poor guy, he's tiny. He's never going to average 100 yards a game in the NFL. He's probably never going to average 80 yards a game in the NFL. And he's doubtful he's going to win you any fantasy championships. But as far as real football goes and winning games in the National Football League, I think Beasley is very underrated. So get this. I went all the way back to 2014 when he was with the Dallas Cowboys. And that year, Des Bryant blew up. He had 88 catches for like 1,300 some yards. But guess who is second on the team in catches? Cole. Yep. 2015, the very next year, he was second again. 2016, he was the leading receiver for Dallas for both catches and yards. 2017 was a down year for him, but it came right back in 2018 by having the second most yards and the most catches by a receiver once again. And last year for the Bills, he was second on the team in catches. So, I mean, this guy, he's obviously quietly a go-to guy, and for good reason. His separation rate, which is how far he is from his defender when he's targeted, last year he was 14th in the league. Out of every receiver in the NFL, he had the 14th largest separation rate from his defender. The year before that, 2018, he was 7th in the league. He's top 10 in getting away from his guy, you know, so he's open for the quarterback to get on the ball. Over those same 2 years, he's also averaged a 70% catch rate. So if you're a QB and you got this little Cole Beasley over here with a scraggly beard lined up beside you, I mean, he doesn't look like a football player, man. If you ran into him on the street, you'd never believe in a million years he plays in the NFL. But this guy, if he's on the field, you know he's going to be open, and you know he's going to catch the ball. Year after year, he gets the job done, and I feel like no one talks about poor little Cole Beasley.
Yeah, he's another guy I think is pretty underappreciated, I guess. Didn't really like him on the Cowboys. I mean, I feel like he always destroyed the Eagles. I feel like he always had his best games against us, against the Eagles. So, yeah,
he's just always there. I mean,
yeah, he just always seems like he's open. He catches the ball. He's tough. He's a good slot receiver. I mean, he's a good receiver. So,
and that's the thing. I think what is he? 5'8", 5'9", 175 pounds.
yeah.
But if there's nobody near you, if your defender isn't near you, you don't have to be 6'4" Julio Jones.
Mm-hmm.
If the defender's not around you, if you can cut, you can break, you can run crisp routes, and you're open, it doesn't matter how big you are. You could be Muggsy Bogues out there in a football uniform. If you're open, you're open. The quarterback can find you and get you the ball.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about the Bills earlier this year. I mean, I think they're kind of flying under the radar. I have them maybe as kind of a sleeper team this year to maybe win the AFC East or go a little further than years past. But, yeah, I mean, he should have a better year with Diggs out there on the outside. I mean, he's going to draw a ton of attention. So
and you have John Brown, deep threat on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, just like when he was on the Cowboys, I mean, when he's used to lining up out there with Dez, I mean, everybody kind of drew over to Dez and Witten, and he was just always open right there. So I think this year could be another year like that. Everybody worried about Diggs and Brown beating them deep, and then old Beasley will be sitting there right in the middle of the field, probably 15 yards down the field, catching, every pass thrown to him.
Man, I'll tell you, if it's third down and I'm a quarterback and we call it a passing play,
yeah,
and I know I have a guy who is a top 14 guy in separation rate, so I know his defender's not going to be near him, and I know he's got a 70% catch rate. That's where I'm going with the football.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like you need one of those guys. Every team needs a Cole Beasley on his team.
Yeah, he's a tough dude, and I know Josh Allen's a little wild at times, but like you said, Beasley's not the biggest target, but if Allen can put it on target or near his target, he's going to catch it. So, yeah, I think he'll have another solid year, and he's not a guy that anybody really talks about. I mean, he just doesn't get the love.
He doesn't even get the fantasy love.
Yeah, no fantasy love. He's always
at least
he's
Tyler
always
Boyd
out
gets
there.
Fantasy love.
Yeah, Tyler Boyd gets some fantasy love. He doesn't get any love, really. I mean,
Cole Beasley is going undrafted. That's for sure.
He's always sitting out there on the waiver wire if you need.
That's right.
If you need somebody. So, all right. So my last guy is from a team I kind of give a hard time about the last couple of weeks. So my guy is coming from the Rams. I got Tyler Higbee. Now, last year, I mean, everybody wants to say, Gerald Everett got hurt, so Higbee played, and, this and that. But, I mean, the stats were there. I mean, he had 69 catches, 735 yards in the last 5 weeks. I know I picked him up in my fantasy league. So, in the last 5 weeks, I mean, he almost carried my team. I mean, he led the NFL in tight ends and receiving yards the last 5 weeks with 522 yards. And then I looked up another stat. I mean, he became the only tight end in NFL history to have 5 straight games of 7+ receptions and 80 receiving yards. So he's a guy I think is on a lot of people's radar, but like you said last week with Gronkowski, like everybody's going to be high on the Ertz and the Gronkowskis and the, all those other guys that are, the Kelce's obviously. But, I mean, I think Higbee doesn't get enough love. I mean, if I were the Rams, I mean, he'd be my starting tight end. I mean, I wouldn't even worry about Gerald Everett. I mean, he's okay. But if I were them, Higbee would be my guy at tight end. Gerald Everett would play every once in a while, or he'd play in some 12 personnel. But, I wouldn't worry about Gerald Everett too much. I mean, I might almost trade him for like a 3rd or 4th round pick if I could get anything for him and just let Higbee do his thing.
So, obviously, we're not there every day. But it seems to me, I think we're going to find out what kind of coach Sean McVay is, because I agree with you. I think Higbee is a more talented tight end than Jared Everett. But Jared Everett, I'm pretty sure, was a 2nd-round pick and the Rams' first draft choice of that, whatever year it was, 2017, I think, of that draft. Because we talked, the Rams haven't had a 1st-round pick in like 4 decades.
Years, yeah.
But so a lot of times when that happens and a player has that draft capital, the teams, well, you got to get him the ball. You got to put him out there again. We spent this high pick on him, So we'll see if McVay is going to fall into that trap, because I know you're not a big McVay fan.
Mm-mm.
Or if maybe he's willing to say, you know what, Higbee is a better player and he's going to be more productive. So I don't care where we drafted Jared Everett. He's going to have to take a back seat, and we're going to have to get Higbee more involved.
Yeah, and to me, that's how it should be. I mean, if you want to win football games, you got to put the best guys out there. So I'm not saying Gerald Everett's the worst tight end in the NFL, but I mean,
He's had flashes. I
think Higbee's better. I mean, he just proved it on the field last year in those last 5 weeks. I mean, I think that's enough. Drew Lock only played 5 weeks, and everybody wants to talk about him being like the next John Elway.
I don't.
Yeah, besides you. But I mean, Daniel came on here and he wants to talk about Drew Lock's going to be like the next John Elway. He only played 5 weeks, but Higbee put it out there on the field. I mean, and like you said with Beasley, I looked it up. I mean, Higbee, it said he caught 78% of his targets last year. I mean, it's 70 catches and 734 yards, and really he was only the guy. He was the main guy for the last 5 weeks. So the other 11 weeks, I mean, he was just kind of rotating in. I mean, getting his time, but I think they were forcing some Gerald Everett a little bit more. And I mean, I just don't think, I think Higbee should be the guy there if they're going to win some games. I think he could really help them, and he can help Goff. But like you said, we'll see what McVay does. And if I was them, I might look to maybe trade Everett. I don't know, get something for him, and just roll.
And maybe the best course for the Rams is, I know we talked about this with a couple of teams about running a lot more 2 tight end personnel. Mm-hmm. And I mean, because if I were to ask, I mean, probably most even semi-legit NFL fans out there who the third wide receiver on the Rams is, mm-hmm. I'm not sure how many people would be able to come up with that. I think right now it's Josh Reynolds, but
yeah,
you got Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. But if your third receiver is questionable and you have Higbee, who knows good, and Jared Everett, who, I mean, he's okay. Again, I agree with you. I don't think he's as talented as Higbee. Maybe the best thing for the Rams is get both of them out there in some of their, formations and personnel, but who knows? I mean, and maybe Everett's a good blocker. So maybe that would be perfect, have Higbee play the slot. I mean, that's a huge slot. We talked about Tyler Boyd being a big slot. Mm-hmm. Get Higbee out there, that solves everybody's problems out there.
Yeah. I mean, it can't hurt because.
But hey, if you're going to be 30-13, you might as well play around, right?
And they got rid of Todd Gurley. So, I mean, to me, their running game is non-existent. So, I mean, they're going to have to do something. They're going to have to throw the ball around the field, I guess. So,
hey,
why not throw it to Higbee?
Here we go.
Yeah.
McVay's getting thrown in the fire here, buddy. We're going to find out, man.
Yeah.
3-13.
3-13, number 2 pick.
All right, brother. My third and final underrated player, I feel like, is constantly called an underrated player, but it never fixes anything. Mm-hmm. So my guy is Matt Ryan. Like I said, Matty Ice.
Yeah.
He's always on these lists, but he's always on these lists because it never changes. Mm-hmm. The dude's an Iron Man, and he's missed, I think, 3 games in his career. And his career started in 2008. He's had 9 consecutive 4,000-yard seasons. He has the most passing yards of any quarterback in history over their first 10 seasons. I went all the way back to 2012 again, because I guess I got nothing better to do with my life. And I looked at the leading passers in the league, and every single year, Matt Ryan is in the top 6. I mean, that's crazy. For almost a decade, the dude has not even been a top 10 QB, but a top 6 QB in passing yardage. He's also tied with Drew Brees for the most fourth-quarter comebacks in a career with 27. I know we talked about Matt Stafford with his fourth-quarter comebacks. I think he's like 25 or 26. But you could argue that, an argument that I'm sure I'll get is, well, the Falcons' offense, they're centered around him. They're centered about throwing the ball. He gets a lot of opportunities to throw. But I think that helps make my point, because when Jimmy Garoppolo made it to the playoffs, the 49ers didn't trust him, so they ran the ball seemingly every play. Atlanta knows that Matt Ryan's one of the best QBs in the league, and they trust him as such. Last year, Matt Ryan ranked 7th in money throws, which are throws that have either show exceptional skill or happened in critical moments. I mean, money throws, that's when you need your quarterback to be good, and Matt Ryan was. The dude has been outperforming his peers for years and still gets no love. You know, Matt Ryan's been in the Pro Bowl 4 times, okay? Do you know who's been in the Pro Bowl 3 times? Derek Carr and Andy freaking Dalton. Come on, folks. Matty Ice needs more love than that.
Yeah. I mean, he's another guy to me, you know, quarterbacks always get the kind of all the publicity. They got all the articles written about him. And he's another guy, like, to me, like Stafford almost. Like, those guys are just underappreciated. I mean, they have the stats and they do it year in and year out. And, I mean, nobody talks about them. And they just get, like, swept under the rug for the, you know, like the Lamar Jacksons and everybody else. I mean, these guys have been doing it for years. And, you know, I think it would be a lot different, obviously, you know, if they could have won that Super Bowl. I mean, he might have got the respect that
Correct.
he deserves.
Correct.
I mean, you know, being up 28-3 in the Super Bowl, and then, you know, not really his fault. I mean, they got pretty conservative. They lost the game, and then he just kind of just flies under everybody's radar. He's just
Falcons fans, I apologize for Brian bringing that up.
Yeah, so sorry, sorry, Ben, but 28-3, you know. And the 49ers fans shouldn't feel any better because that's old Kyle Shanahan, your coach. So, you know, he didn't do too hot either last year. So I don't know if he can win the big games, but yeah, Matty Ice. Yeah, I mean, in my mind, he's one of those guys. I mean, I remember him being back in Boston College, and he's just always been that constant quarterback for the Falcons. I mean,
and he's quiet too, man.
Yeah, I mean, he don't ever say a peep. You know, you don't ever hear anything about him, which is a good thing. And, you know, sometimes that's what you need, obviously. And it's just like, I don't know, people just take him for granted. And then if you do bring him up, they'll just say, well, you know, he has Julio Jones, he had Tony Gonzalez back in the day. They got Calvin Ridley now. So, you know,
but he performs. It's not like he has those guys that doesn't perform. He does perform.
Yeah, and I think, I just think he's just not real flashy, and he just goes out there and does his job, and I think, you know, it's just –
And he performs when it matters the most.
Yeah,
I mean,
people want the flash.
Right, and he's tied for the most fourth-quarter comebacks. I mean, that's when the pressure's on. Money throws, he's money. He's money on the money throws. I mean, the poor guy, give him a defense. What could he do if the Falcons had anything that resembled a decent NFL defense? I mean, I don't know. He's look.
Yeah, I mean,
if I'm running an NFL franchise, I would be thrilled to have him as my quarterback. And a lot of times, you know, we watch these teams and we're thinking to ourselves, like, what are you doing? Like, give this guy the ball. Why are you not doing this? Why are you not doing that? You know, last year, the Carolina Panthers, they knew they had maybe 2 players on offense, DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey. And every play, one of those 2 guys got the football. At least Atlanta's smart enough to know, look, we have a great quarterback. We're going to put the ball in his hands every play and, you know, do what you do, Matt, because, I mean, he wins some football games and he produces year after year after year.
Yeah. We might have to put him in one of our creative debates to see how our fan base reacts.
I like that. I like that. Hey, so
for those who don't listen to the show, maybe we'll feed old Matty Ice to him that way on Facebook to see if he gets some love or not. We'll see what happens.
That's fine. Hey, and before we move on to our guests, I want to say, obviously, I'm not sitting in my house right now. We're doing the show remotely here. We're at Naughty Dog Brewery again. I was hanging out today and thought I'd go, you know, maybe try it remotely. And the girlfriend said, hey, let's go to Naughty Dog. So here I am, following directions. And she's basically the reason this whole podcast thing got started. She's the one that got Brian and I together and kind of lit the fire under us to do this. So she's she wants to go to Naughty Dog. Well, I'll happily come here. And like I said, the last time we were here, it's an awesome place. They got a nice outdoor area that my son was running around and going nuts and playing. It's all fenced in. They have sodas, as I mentioned. They also obviously have beverages for grown-ups. We're still working to get that root beer back. I know a lot of us love that. And so, yeah, fantastic establishment. We love it here. So make sure if you're in the Greenville, Winterville, North Carolina area, make sure to check it out, Naughty Dog Brewery.
Yes, sir. Good spot. All right. I think now we're going to roll into our first preview. We're going to roll into the Las Vegas Raiders with Mr. Shane Feldman. All right, back here with Raiders fan, Mr. Shane Feldman, who I have to say, for those of you who can't see, has the best beard I've ever seen. And to be honest, look, I've known Shane. Shane's a cousin to me, like JJ. I've probably known Shane, I don't even know how long. I mean, it's got to be, I don't know, 17, 18 years. And I think he's had that damn beard since he was in like middle school or something. So that thing's been pretty luscious ever since he was younger. He just had his first kid, so that it might start turning a little more gray.
Congrats.
In a couple years.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Thank you.
Yeah, so the longer hair and the comb over for me is no accident. I'm starting to get a little thin here from stressing about my son. So, Joe, it's coming, man. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Oh, I switched to the hat to cover all that.
Yeah.
All right, Shane. So tell everybody where you're at and why the hell are you a Raiders fan living in New Jersey?
Shoot, yeah, all right. I'm down in South Jersey. I've been a Raiders fan since I was 7. I played for the East Greenwich Raiders when I was a little kid, 7 years old, playing for the Raiders for midget football. Put on that silver and black, and I loved it ever since. And that's what I've been going with. So 25 years now as a Raiders fan.
I hear you. There we go. Guard dog's going. And I also played for that same Raiders team. I have to admit, man, I think if I had to pick another team, the Raiders are probably like my second team. I mean, I loved wearing those helmets. I mean, when we were younger, I mean, that was like the best thing ever. And
oh, dude,
if I had to go with an AFC team, I'll go with the silver and black. So, all right, man.
I'm sorry. When I played junior league, I played for the Dolphins. I want nothing to do with that franchise.
I can feel you on that. Well, my first team I played for was the Falcons, but I don't need that, though.
Damn, that's true, too, because I played for Gibbstown Falcons, too. So I went from the Falcons to the Raiders, and then you go right on into high school. So
yeah, I was Gibbstown Falcons for my first season when I was, 6 years old. But I did something about the silver and black.
Yeah, now they're in Vegas, makes it even more attractive.
Absolutely.
All right,
I just keep saying the flights are cheaper.
Yeah, you got to get them now, man. So my first question for you here, I love talking about quarterbacks. So you guys got Mr. Derek Carr, who, I mean, to me, he's a guy that he has all the skills. I mean, from 2015 to 2017, he made the Pro Bowl. In 2016, I mean, I'm pretty sure he probably was going to be the MVP, and then he got hurt. And then in comes John Gruden, and he just seems like he's not really getting much better. So as a Raiders fan, in your eyes, is this kind of a do-or-die year for David Carr, especially since they've signed Marcus Mariota as the backup? So, I mean, do you think Derek Carr is going to turn around this year and kind of get back to his old form, or do you think he kind of fizzled out and, Mariota might get half the starts this year? What's your take on that?
All right. So, I mean, I don't put much stock in his Pro Bowls because a lot of times he was in because of people dropping out or people hurt. Like 2016, before Trent Cole broke his leg, and he was a legit looking MVP. And that was also Donald Penn's only sack he gave up that entire season.
Wow.
That was a bad one. That wasn't the one to give up.
So, No. Especially when we're about to go into playoffs for the first time in forever.
Yeah.
But there's a couple things with him. I think a lot of it's between the years with him right now. I think he's scared from the leg. The next year he had basically broke his back for fractured vertebrae, I think against Baltimore. And he's never really seems like he's been quick with the dump off or the throwaways ever since. But this is his first time, I think, in his career ever, like college, high school ever, that he's going to have the same head coach, same offensive coordinator for, I think, 3 years in a row now with Gruden and Greg Olson, who I think Greg Olson was his coordinator, I believe, his rookie year as well. But that was kind of a throwaway year. That team was bad.
Yeah.
But so he's got a lot going for him. They added a lot of weapons in the draft. They got weapons. Tyrell Williams is going to come back healthy. Hunter Renfro's my man. Love the kid.
Yeah.
But yeah, the pressure's on. We've been calling for him as much as I know with most sensible Raiders fans, which there's not a lot of us, but we try to speak up.
Yeah.
We've been calling for a good backup for a while now to push him because we always feel like he needs someone behind you. You don't want him comfortable because he's not great, but he's good enough. But he needs to be pushed to that next level. See if he can reach that next level.
Now, I never understood why Gruden was considered some cute. It's like John Gruden came out with like a TV show, like Gruden's QB camp or whatever it was. And all of a sudden people think he's a quarterback guru, or like maybe because he won a Super Bowl with Brad Johnson, who's like not a great quarterback, but that's not even the reason they won the Super Bowl. I still have no idea why people think Gruden is a QB whisperer.
Yeah. I don't know. I was looking at his stats, and outside of his completion percentage, everything's pretty much going down. Last year he completed almost 71% of his passes, but other than that, like yardage, touchdowns, that's all been going down with Gruden. And like Bobby said, I just don't see why everybody thinks he can kind of turn all these quarterbacks around. But yeah, you make a good point. I think this year with the weapons that they have and with Mariota sitting back there, you might see him revert back to those years that he was making those Pro Bowls, and maybe like a 2016 year. So for your sake, I hope he turns it around.
I think Mariota was a quietly good signing for them.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, Shane.
Personally, I was pulling for them to get Cam Newton.
Yeah,
yeah, I take
he's
Cam.
He's going to upgrade most quarterback rooms in the league for sure. All right, Shane. The Raiders are notorious for crazy, terrible first-round picks. Who in their right mind drafts a punter and a kicker in the first round? Now, granted, a long time ago, and Ray Guy and Sebastian Janikowski are two of the greatest players to ever play at their position. But in the first round, even 2 years ago, the only team that had Clelin Ferrell on the top of their draft boards was your Raiders. This past draft was no different. At pick 12, with CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy both still out there, Las Vegas takes Henry Ruggs. Ruggs was third on his own college team in receiving, which was Alabama, behind Jerry Jeudy, who, again, they passed on. The Davis family, they've known to have a propensity for loving guys with speed, which Ruggs has in bucketfuls. But was he the best receiver in this class? No worries, though. If the Raiders are going to gamble on their first pick, they had another first-round pick to fall back on. So they'll definitely play it safer, right? They'll take someone who's more of a sure thing. And then we all hear the name Damon Arnett. And I think everyone in the country said, who? Arnett was a corner, and like Ruggs, he wasn't even the best player at his position on his own college team. Jeff Okudah was Ohio State's best corner, and obviously he went, third overall to the Lions. And I did far too much research going into the draft this year, and I didn't see Arnett's name on any mock drafts in the first round. Not a single one. So please tell us, how do you feel about this year's draft, and just what goes on in that Raiders draft room?
Yeah, all right. So a lot of feelings about the draft. Outside of the first round, the later round picks, the third round picks and on, I liked a lot of them. I liked them all. I liked the Bowden. I liked the Brian Edwards, adding versatility to the receiving core. Now to the first round with the Ruggs pick, I personally, I mean, I've said it on the board. I wanted CeeDee Lamb.
Mm-hmm.
He was there.
Me too.
I wanted that playmaking ability, that just catch the ball, run after catch, make something happen. From what I've read, seen, from people talking and like in the know, they wanted their Tyreek Hill. They wanted the over the top, take the top off the defense, just speed guy that they know they can just go get it. They felt like they could either get guys possession wise later in the draft, or had guys on the team they could fill kind of that role. But they were like, we're in a track meet with Kansas City, so we need to go get a guy who can just go. And like, so after hearing some of it, I mean, you watch his tape. I mean, they were 1A, B, C. Like, they all had slightly different things they could do. Personally, like I said, I was a CeeDee Lamb guy. I was CeeDee Lamb for like the last, like, since he busted on the scene. I was CeeDee Lamb 2-3 years ago. But I can't be mad at getting Ruggs because of just the stuff he can do.
Mm-hmm.
With Arnett, man, that was crazy. I mean, there's so many guys on the board where you're looking and like, all right, they can get this guy, they can get that guy. This is going to be great. Like, yeah, Ruggs is that deep threat, bam, over the top home run. Now you're going to get your lockdown corner. You're going to get this guy. You're going to get maybe I don't know, some sort of linebacker, deep edge rusher maybe you weren't thinking of. And then you hear Damon Arnett. And you're like, what? Like, come on now.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, the big knock on him was his speed. Like, he didn't combine well. His 40 time was trash. And then they come out looking like dumb because you see his tape without his combine numbers. You look at his tape. He's a solid player. Like, he looks like he can do the job. Now you look at it and it was like a 5.4 something was his 40, and that's just too slow for a corner. You can't play corner at 4.54. It's not going to happen with how fast these guys are now. And the Raiders said, though, they got it clocked in the 4.4s. So if they're right, maybe they got themselves a steal. If they're wrong, it's just going to be another one of them Raiders first-round picks that everyone's going to laugh at.
Yeah, I mean, I like Ruggs. I mean, but it's hard to – you got to take the fact I don't know. You got to take those other guys out of the mix, you know. Like, you got Henry Ruggs. I mean, granted, you could have got Lamb. You could have got Judy. But, you know, Ruggs helps on special teams. He's like a young Deshaun Jackson, you know. I mean, the guy's he's a track star. He's a Deshaun. He's a Tyreek Hill. But like you said, I mean, I like – minus the Arnett pick, I mean, I like the Bryan Edwards. I like those I like those third-round picks. I mean, that kid Bryan Edwards from South Carolina, he's like 6'3", 6'4". I mean, he's big. And then the kid from Kentucky, I mean, that kid was a receiver, and then he played quarterback all year for Kentucky.
Yeah, Limbo.
I mean,
they have him listed at running back too on the Raiders roster.
Yeah, he's like an Antonio Gibson guy, like Washington guy. He just plays everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I love that pick. I love the Edwards. He's huge. And Ruggs is who he is, and he's a quick dude. I think he'll do fine. I mean, you just can't take it. You got to take it with a grain of salt. I mean, you know, coulda, shoulda, woulda. You could have had Lamb. You could have had Judy, but you know.
Yeah, the big thing is I don't think he's Darius Hayward-Bay at least. So
yeah, I'd rather have Henry Ruggs than.
Boy, I hope not.
We'll put it this way: I'd rather have Ruggs than Jalen Reagor. So we'll just leave it at that.
Oh
so.
Yeah, come on.
And then you can join.
Could have Jalen Reagor and Mims.
Yeah, you could.
Instead, you got hurt.
Yeah, you could join the CeeDee Lamb fantasy team because at least CeeDee Lamb didn't go to the Chiefs; he went to the Cowboys, which is like a damn stab in the heart.
Next year he's going to have. After this year, he's going to have Andy Dalton throwing in the ball.
Yeah.
You might be right.
All right, so looking at their defense, Bobby mentioned Cleveland Ferrell got picked last year at number 4. I mean, he's still kind of, he could be a bust, but, it was only his first year. It could be we'll call it a disappointment. But you guys did pick Max Crosby. That guy, he was a pretty solid pick. I was looking at your guys' pass rush here. So in 2018, you only had 13 sacks, which is pretty bad. Last year you bumped it up to 32. So, that's almost doubling plus a little bit of your sack total there. So, I mean, to me, to win games in the NFL in your division, you have Mahomes, you have Locke, you have Tyrod Taylor. I mean, to win close games in your division, you have to rush the passer and you have to get sacks. So in your mind, with what they did in the offseason, do you think the pass rush is good enough to win you guys those close games this year?
All right, so an old Al Davis mantra is the quarterback must go down, and he must go down hard. That was his number one thought on defense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they've done enough. I love Max Crosby. Mad Max, I think he's going to be a superstar. The dude puts in the work. He's got the talent. I mean, 10 sacks as a rookie, it shows. The Farrell thing, he's a hard worker. Maybe he can be hold down the fort, run one stop, kind of a Brandon Graham type DN, where he don't really produce much sacks, but he's a force in the run game. But also, Khalil Mack had 4.5 sacks his rookie year. Yeah. So, there's always room for improvement.
Now, you guys
inside they added Malik Collins, who's a very good pass rushing D tackle, and then Mo Hurst and PJ Hall. Mo Hurst can produce. PJ Hall, he's on the bubble. I don't know if he's going to make the roster or not, but he's got interior pressure ability. Yeah. He just hasn't shown it consistently. But the other thing is, earlier this week or last week, the report came out that they were looking at Clowney. I mean, everybody's looking at Clowney. Yeah. But it said, I was reading up on, it said Gruden loves him, but man, who doesn't Gruden love?
Yeah.
There's a kind of sounds like there's a little power struggle between Mayock and Mark Davis about how much money they want to let Gruden try to give Clowney, because it seems like Gruden was open up the purse for Clowney and just paying what he wants. And Mayock's kind of saying like, come on now, let's keep it reasonable. But if they can add Clowney, I'd be all for adding Clowney for the right price. I mean, if you can get him around $10 million for a year or two, I'd pay that. I'd pay that money.
Yeah.
Especially in Vegas, because there's no what's the tax in Vegas?
State income tax.
Income tax.
Yeah.
You guys
so
did
you get more money.
You guys did get Carl Nassib, the guy from the Bucks.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he had a good year.
Yeah, he had the last 2 years. He's had 13 sacks the last 2 years for the Bucks. So
was he a Penn Stater?
Yeah, he's a Penn State guy, and he was like
I believe he is.
Yeah, he's a Penn State guy, and he was like the star of the what's the NFL show. He was what was he on, the Browns or somebody
Hard
like
Knocks?
that? Yeah, Hard Knocks.
Oh, Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
Telling everybody how to invest their money. If you save $100,000, whatever. He was like the financial guru. So maybe he can put some sacks together out there.
That Raiders defense is getting a Hard Knock start back too, with Jonathan Abrams coming back. So they added Corey Littleton. They added Nick Wilkowski, or however you say his name.
Yeah.
So if they can get a little better coverage on the back end,
the sacks,
gives that split second for the DN to get there quicker. They can add to the sack total that way too.
That's true.
All right, Shane. After taking Farrell at 4 in the 2019 draft, I think the Raiders did redeem themselves by taking running back Josh Jacobs. He had an impressive rookie year, rushing for 1,150 yards and 7 touchdowns in only 13 games. You spread that out over 16 games, and you're looking at 1,400 plus yards, which would have been third in the NFL behind only Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb, and ahead of Christian McCaffrey. Unfortunately, one knock on Jacobs coming out was a possibility of him having durability issues. The most carries he ever had in one season at Alabama was 120. Well, he had a total of 251 carries in his collegiate career, and he had 242 just last year alone. And unfortunately, our fears were proven to be legitimate. He missed 3 games with a fractured shoulder. The talent is there, no question. Dude's a beast. But there's nothing on the depth chart behind Jacobs. So, in your opinion, should the Raiders continue making him their bell cow back? Should they back off? Can they even afford to back off with no proven runners behind it? What do you think?
Yeah, see, I love Josh Jacobs. He actually, I mean, he fractured that shoulder against the Packers, and he played another 6 games or whatever with the fractured shoulder and still put up the yards. I mean, the guy, that's the low carries and you think durability in college. I see low carries in college as a good thing, meaning, you know, he's not coming out of college with 600 touches. He's coming out of college with 200 touches. So, you know, maybe he himself needs to just tweak his running style a little bit, because you don't see many running backs lowering their shoulder, hitting the guy 10 yards downfield to get another 2 yards. If they're 10 yards downfield, they're ducking out of bounds. They're kind of going low, giving up, trying to avoid the hit. He hurt
That sounds
himself.
like Raiders football.
Dude, I know. I love the fact that he just put that the play where he did hurt himself. I remember it. It was like the second play of the game, and he put that shoulder down and ran right through the dude. And I loved every second of it. Maybe in the future, you step out of bounds instead of putting the shoulder into the guy, and you don't fracture your shoulder. I personally, I know he's not a proven back. He's not an every down back. I love me some Jalen Richard. I do. The dude, for third down back, for a change of pace guy, he can do a lot. Lynn Bowden's going to get some touches on third down at running back. He's going to be split, like H-back kind of thing in the slot. He's going to be coming in for passes, screens, stuff like that. So I think they'll try to they got to try to manage his touches a little better. I mean, running backs take a beating, and anyway, so you can't have him up there at the 300 carry mark. You got to keep him lower. You got to protect those players like that. I mean, it's just a physical sport. But the other thing with Gruden, it's crazy. I think Jacobs is only the second time Gruden's had a 1,000-yard rusher too. It's like Cadillac Williams in like 2005 was like the only other time. So he doesn't do much. His running backs get touches. They get touches, but he's not usually a guy who gives a running back the ball 25 times a game and just run it. So if he can split the touches up a little better, I think Jacobs can just carry the load. He's got better hands than you think, and I think he could really do some damage. Like, I would take him as a good fantasy addition. That's all I'm saying.
All right. That's what I was going to ask you. Is Jacobs would you pick Jacobs? What if you're in a 10-team league? What round are you picking Jacobs? First or second, or what?
PPR.
Yeah, PPR. 10-team league.
All right.
Where are you picking Jacobs?
I'll probably around between 8 and 12. I'm high as heck on the dude. So
yeah, he's your
weird.
I hear you. All right, man. So that's all the football questions we have for you. So usually when we have our guests on, we kind of throw a little wrench into the plans here and ask them kind of an obscure question. Now, I was bored at work today, man, and I Googled weirdest questions you could ask somebody.
Oh my gosh.
And it was like a list of 100 things. Now, I mean, a lot of them were kind of, a little R-rated. But I came across one I thought would be pretty good. For those of you who don't know Shane, I mean, you like your bourbon, and you're probably, you're like a whiskey and bourbon connoisseur, I would imagine. I like to call you. So I came across the question which says, would you rather go 2 straight summers without drinking any alcohol or live and work a full year in Antarctica? What would you pick?
Send me to Antarctica.
For 1
Wow.
year? So you got to work.
Oh, yeah,
you got to
I'll go
live
there
and
for
work
a
there.
year.
For, all right.
I don't
No
mind
way.
the cold.
You don't
I
mind
don't
the cold?
mind the cold.
All right.
Nah, and I'll have a glass of scotch to warm me up.
No. And for our young listeners, Shane is way over the
Yes.
legal age of drinking, so
I
we're
am.
good to go there.
I've been above the legal age for many years now.
Yeah. I thought that was a good one to ask you. So I
All
figured
right.
that's what I thought the answer was going to be, but I figured I'd put it out there.
No. Gosh, keep me away from Antarctica.
Yeah.
All right. So I did a little homework on you, Shane, and I found out that you're big into barbecue, smoking foods. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. So if someone said, I'll give you $1 million to impress me with your barbecue, what are you making?
Ooh. Now, see, a lot of people, when they do barbecue smoke stuff, they're talking ribs, brisket, things like that. And I do all those things. But I make a smoked pork loin. I get the pork loin about 12 pounds. Nice big fat one. There's not a lot of actual fat on it, just a small fat cap on the top. So it's a hard meat to smoke because it's very lean. But I'll marinate that, I'll rub it up, and I'll let that thing smoke, and I'll put that up against anything.
Nice.
You wrap it in bacon or anything? Keep it moist?
No, I just throw it right on there, and I'll put in a little foil at the end, maybe a little peach paper at the end, but that's about it.
All right, man. You let me know next time you throw one of them bad boys on. I head up to New Jersey.
Absolutely.
Hey,
right.
thanks a lot for coming on, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
All right, Shane. We'll talk to you soon, and thanks for coming on. You're going to be our Raiders insider. So
Yeah.
20.
Hey man, I live on Twitter, man. So I got all the scoops.
All right, we'll have to tomorrow when we add it to our Facebook page, we'll put your Twitter handle down there. So if anybody has any more questions, they'll go right to the source for you.
There you go.
And I also, real quick before you head out, I was looking. Now I don't know about fans in the stands this year, but I know in 2021 those Eagles are going to Vegas, and I'm pretty sure I'm a 10 of 10 in for that trip. So we'll get that going. Yeah, I'm like a 12 out of 10 on that trip. So we'll get that figured out.
So I went to the link on Christmas Day. And 17?
Yeah.
It was 3 degrees out, and I was there.
Yeah. All right.
You better believe I'm going to Vegas.
So we got some time to figure that out, but yeah, I'm a 10 of 10 on that trip, so we'll get that going on. So thanks for coming on, man, and we'll talk to you soon, dude.
Yes, sir.
See you, bud.
See you, man.
Later.
All right, no hesitation, folks. We on to our next guest, which you've heard this name before, Michael Seff. He is back with us. He's an enormous football fan and knows just about everything you could know about the game. And, I mean, he could probably hop on here for every single team. But we got him on here talking about the Tennessee Titans today that I know I mentioned before, played in the AFC Championship game last year. So, Mike, I don't want to delay. We know you already, so let's hop right into the good stuff. The Titans made a run, like I just said, all the way to the championship game last year. And although quarterback Ryan Tannehill played great, they did it on the back of their running game and Derrick Henry. The Titans were 3rd in the league in rushing last year, and Henry had a league high 303 rushes, another 83 rushes in the playoffs, and you throw in a few catches, and my man had over 400 touches on the year. Now, history has shown us that backs who get 400 touches rarely come back and dominate like they did the year before. Now, I'm here to suggest that although Henry led the league in rushing last year with over 1,500 yards, I think there might be a changing of the guard in Tennessee. Now, coaching staffs come and go, but Tennessee, they've kind of been a running back factory. A long time ago, they had Eddie George. He dominated for a long time. After he left a few years later, CJ 2K burst on the scene. Then even DeMarco Murray came in, and he rushed for almost 1,300 yards when people thought he was washed up. after bombing in Philly the year after Dallas gave him 400 touches. So, and obviously they have Henry now, who's killing it. I wouldn't be surprised if Darrington Evans, who the Titans took in the 3rd round this year, is the next running back to lead the Tennessee running game. Now, I'm not saying this year, but maybe the next year. Evans, he's 5'10", he's 203. He's nowhere near the gargantuan Henry, who's 6'3", 247 or something like that. But Evans was a workhorse in college. He had the 11th most carries in the nation last year as a running back. And he was also productive with those carries, almost 6 yards per rush, and was 6th in the country in total touchdowns. Now, I'm not saying the Titans are and you'll like this, Mike, Seff. They're not the late 90s, early 2000 Broncos who pumped out 5 separate 1,000-yard backs in 7 years, most of them with names you can't remember, like Reuben Drones.
I remember.
But they've done pretty well. And they also chose not to give Derrick Henry a long-term contract. So do you think the Titans can rely on Henry to carry them yet again and hope he stays healthy? Or do they just run him in the ground, knowing he's on a franchise tag for this year, and give the reins to Evans next year?
I was waiting for an Olandis Gary mention in there too.
Oh, he's in there, man. He's one of those guys.
I think it's going to be closer to the latter. And like you said, they didn't give him a long-term deal. And the problem right now, I mean, if it's a problem, last year they had no production in the running game after Derrick Henry. I mean, it was Derrick Henry or bust. I mean, Dion Lewis was the 2nd leading rusher with 209 yards last year, and he's gone to play with the Giants right now. So Darrington Evans, that's a good point that you mentioned that. They also have Dallin Dawkins. So we're not really sure how things would go if Derrick Henry were to drop off. And as you mentioned, he played 19 regular season games last year, if you include 3 postseason games. You kind of think about it, you know, in baseball terms, I see pitchers that pitch deep into postseason. Will it be the same carryover effect? And I think there's probably on some level, that's why the Tigers are hesitant to hand out money to Henry. Now you think about it, he's in his 5th year. If there is such thing as a prime for a running back, he's still in it. And you look at his first 3 years in the league, he never had even 100 carries his first 2 years. And he had 215 in 2018. So last year was the first year we really saw him be a true workhorse. And I think the hope is in the window that they have open right now, or think they have open, they're gonna ride him, because the backup plan, we don't know. I mean, Darrington Evans surely looks good in college, but I still think no matter what, with a rookie being put in that position, it's going to be a big drop-off. So they need to hope Henry stays healthy. And I think he'll still put up pretty big numbers because, like I said, he didn't have a lot of wear and tear previous to last year. But, you know, if you think about it, it's certainly possible.
All right.
Yeah. Quick Dion Lewis story. So he was on the Eagles, right? So my cousin lives in Scottsdale, Arizona. Me and my buddy flew out there to watch an Eagles-Cardinals game. I don't know, maybe 2011, 2012, somewhere around there. So we go to the casino, and Dion Lewis is sitting there with Trent Cole at the blackjack table. Now, Dion Lewis, I don't think could count to 21, right? So we sit down, and I'm betting $25, $50 a hand. He's betting $100 to $500 a hand. I mean, we're basically telling him what to do. He gets up and walks away with like $7,500, and he's like, and he's just like, "Yeah, thanks, guys." And I was like,
"Man, no tip, no nothing."
I was like, "Bro, Dion Lewis, you still owe me like a $500 chip at least." But anyway, that's my Dion Lewis blurb for the. All right, so Bobby mentioned Ryan Tannehill. He had a pretty good year last year, but you know he's 31 years old, and the 10 games that he played last year were probably the 10 best games he's ever played in his life. He ends up getting a 4-year deal for like $118 million. You know, after being traded from the Dolphins for a 6th and 7th round pick. So I mean, as an outsider, I know you're not a Titans fan, but you know, what are your thoughts on that contract? And do you think it's deserved that kind of money? And do you think he's the guy for the Titans long term?
my first thing that came to my head as a Ravens fan was the Joe Flacco contract, which didn't quite work out after he had a postseason. And you're talking about Tannehill, 118 million and 62 fully guaranteed. So interesting that the Titans made the investment there and not potentially with Derrick Henry. Look, Tannehill was a first-round pick in Miami. He was the 8th overall pick. And, there's like a few schools of thought on this, that this is the guy that the Dolphins had hoped that they would see, but that he wasn't in the right system, needed a fresh start. He gave them a spark. He was 7-3 in the regular season and then won a couple of postseason games. And I felt like Tannehill was actually at his best in the postseason when they didn't ask him to do too much. And that showed you a couple things. I think it showed that he can put up big numbers. He had 22 touchdowns, 6 picks, which is not massive, but it's obviously pretty productive over those 10 regular season games. But then he also played the role of game manager. Very smart football he played against Baltimore and gave him a chance at least against Kansas City. I think he's more the future than Marcus Mariota was. And that may not be saying much, given that Mariota didn't ever quite blossom in 5 years in Nashville. But I think the fact that Tannehill brings smarts, he brings a toughness, and he brings mobility, I think they're kind of hoping that they're going to get out of him what they felt they should have got out of Mariota. And, in these days, it's not like the quarterback market is all that robust where they're going to be able to go out and swing a big trade. The interesting thing to me, though, is again, we were talking about this with Derrick Henry, if Tannehill goes down, right now I was looking at the depth chart for the Titans, and behind Ryan Tannehill, Logan Woodside, they don't have any experience. I thought actually they might be players to pick up Cam Newton before he ended up in New England. Would have been interesting to see if Cam had taken a backup role. But so the bottom line, I don't know that he's worth that. I don't know that any quarterback would necessarily be worth that. And but again, if that's kind of the going rate now with what Jimmy Garoppolo got, with what Flacco got, obviously Tannehill didn't win a Super Bowl, but he put up good numbers, got them to the AFC Championship game. So I think it's still about as good a move as Tennessee could make in this situation, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. No, they did lock up Henry today. They gave him $50 million, $25 million guaranteed.
Wow.
So 4 years, $50 million. So you're looking at what, 12 and a half a year, half of it guaranteed. So yeah,
set out the window.
And invest in the money in Henry and in Tannehill. Interesting.
Now it makes more sense.
Okay. Yeah.
The breaking news. Bobby, you're on mute there, but yeah, I think that was so interesting.
Yeah. That's sorry. Just a couple of numbers I ran into with Brian Tannehill. I'm pretty sure he had the highest quarterback rating in the league last year. It was like 117, I think, when he took over. And if you look at the stats per game, the game he took over, I think Marcus Mariota's quarterback rating was a 9.6. I can't remember the team they were playing, but then Tannehill stepped in and his was like a 96 for the rest of the game. And then the very next game, when he played the full game, Tannehill threw for 300 yards. And it was only a 300-yard passing game up until that point that the Titans had all season. So, I mean, he came in and just killed it from the get-go. So, he does the contract he got. I don't think he deserves it from what he's done, but I think at least previously from last year. But I think from what he did last year, and what if he can continue that, then I think they got a steal. But obviously, it's Ryan Tannehill, so we'll see. But anyway, Mike, the Titans' defense during the regular season, they were decent. They were 21st in total yards allowed, 24th in passing, 12th in rushing, which is all right. And they were 12th in scoring defense. Obviously, that's pretty good. When they got to the playoffs, though, they turned it up a little bit. They only surrendered 13 points in their upset win against the Patriots and only 12 points against their even bigger upset win, which is against, unfortunately, your Ravens. I'm not sure I have a lot of confidence heading into this year, though, for that unit. They were able to keep a lot of their players on defense, and they took a few guys in the draft. They took cornerback Christian Fulton in the second round, which I thought was a steal for them. I thought that was a great pick. They took a defensive tackle in the 5th round. That's kind of a dart throw. They took a safety in the 7th round. That's an even bigger dart throw. I think the biggest addition might be Vic Beasley, who's always been an underachiever. He's always had the skills, just never really produced. But his pass rush win rate last year was 15th in the whole league out of everybody. So he's winning his battles with offensive linemen. He's not getting the quarterback. He's not getting that sack. He's not getting that hit, that kind of thing. So, his numbers could be higher, I guess. He definitely has a skill set to produce. Unfortunately, the Titans only had one Pro Bowler on defense last year, Jarrell Casey, and they ended up trading him to Denver, which baffles me. I think this is a huge loss for Tennessee. So can Tennessee's defense step up and play like Titans, or do they flounder around in the middle of the pack again?
Yeah, you mentioned that Casey trade. Very surprising. And he's a 5-time Pro Bowler throughout the course of the year.
For a 7th rounder, I think.
Round pick to Denver, which, you see a trade like that always leads you to believe maybe there's more to the story than just, hey, what they saw on the field. But at the end of the day, I believe that was a salary dump because he was about almost $14 million, $13.5 million cap hit next year and close to $14 million the next couple of years. So, yeah, you factor that in as well. And they're hoping, as you mentioned, Beasley. This is a guy that when the Falcons went to the Super Bowl in 2016, led the league in sacks. He was an absolute playmaker. So there's always that chance that he could step in, and they're hoping that a couple of young guys up front. They had a situational pass rusher that showed some promise, Kamale Correa, and their first-round pick in 2019, who missed time after tearing his ACL, I believe, in the offseason. Jeffrey Simmons only had a couple sacks but only got into 9 games. So I think there's enough there in terms of potential for the pass rush. You bring Beasley into the fold, and he had 8 sacks last year. You mentioned the kind of peripheral numbers that he put up that show that he's still a pretty young guy, all things considered. And then I want to see how the secondary performs. You remember a guy that they really didn't get a lot of production from last year because of foot injuries, Adoree Jackson. They lost Logan Ryan in free agency. Malcolm Butler, we'll see what he brings. He kind of, I think, has been a little bit of disappointment since coming over from New England. And then, as you mentioned, the draft pick, Christian Fulton, you wonder if he may have a chance to even crack the rotation as a starter, cornerback at LSU. So I think their defense should be, again, they were middle of the pack, I think above average last year. I think they should stay in that realm, again, if they stay healthy. The thing I wonder about losing a guy like Jarrell Casey, do you lose a little more than just production? Do you lose some leadership? When you bring in a guy like Vic Beasley, are you getting the best of Vic Beasley, or are you kind of getting a lesser version? So we'll see. But I think they have a lot of playmakers on defense. And, of course, you've got a defensive-minded coach who I think has done a great job with that unit, and Mike Vrabel. So I still expect the Titans to be a pretty good team defensively.
Yeah. All right. So that leads me into my second question for you. Looking big picture, Bobby said earlier, obviously they played in the AFC Championship game last year. Somewhat of a surprise. I think they rode that Henry train right on into the AFC Championship game. So with that being said, what do you think the Titans can do this year? For me, I mean, I have them at 8-8 or 9-7 at best. What do you think? Where do the Titans go in 2020?
I think in terms of being a contender in the bigger picture of the AFC, might be asking a lot to say, can they stack up with the Ravens, with the Chiefs? That remains to be seen. But in the sense that their division is very winnable right now, and you look around the division, and Indianapolis is banking on a very aged quarterback in Phillip Rivers to sort of solve their problems. The Texans lost one of the best receivers in all of football in DeAndre Hopkins, and the Jaguars are the Jaguars, last I checked. So there's definitely room for the Titans to, there's a good chance the Titans can repeat as AFC South. Well, they didn't win the AFC South, I think, correctly, but that they could win the AFC South this year or get into the postseason. And, one thing that stands out, first of all, the last 4 years, the Titans have been 9-7 every year for the last 4 years. That's like a fact that's easy to kind of lose sight of when you realize they made the AFC Championship game last year. But they've been kind of remarkably consistent in being just above average, and 9-7 wasn't good enough for Mike Mularkey to keep his job, even after they upset the Chiefs in the playoffs a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. But I think one thing I really like about the Titans is Mike Vrabel. And I still have that image of watching Bill Belichick fume as Mike Vrabel ran the clock down on him in the playoffs. And so much of what I think happened for Tennessee last year, yes, they got hot with Ryan Tannehill. Yes, they rode Derrick Henry. deep into the playoffs. But so much of that to me was just Mike Vrabel and his ability to just really to outcoach the competition. I thought he really outcoached Belichick in that playoff game. He outcoached John Harbaugh in that playoff game. I thought he did about as good a job as he could have against Kansas City because overall they were overmatched. You look at the 3 Titans playoff games last year, 2 of which they won. They were outgained in all 3 of those games despite winning 2 of them. So that kind of tells me that they have a little bit of that New England type feel where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And I think that's why I'm still optimistic that they're not a total fluke. Again, Brian, I tend to agree with you kind of in that 9, maybe 10 win range as far as, being optimistic. But again, I think that could very well be good enough to win the AFC South. And as we saw last year, just getting to the playoffs, it gives you a great chance because you never know what could happen.
True. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I feel like so many, Bill Belichick disciples don't perform well and they get a lot of heat. So that's kind of refreshing, I guess, in a weird way to hear like someone, stand up for a Belichick disciple and Mike Vrabel saying, he actually is doing a good job. He's doing some good things. So that was nice.
I like the Colts this year, man. I think they're going to win. I think Colts 10-6. Titans maybe 8-8.
Like the Colts, yeah.
I think Rivers will Rivers, Jonathan Taylor. I think they'll take that division, but we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Wait. I'm sorry. Did I hear Jonathan Taylor?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Okay. Anyway, I love that guy. All right, Mike. I got one more for you. So, with all the Madden ratings coming out, with people posting online and everything. I know Brian even posted on our site today about, Madden ratings. It made me think of my own personal experiences playing video games back when I was much younger. I'm a grown up now, so, I don't really play anymore. Well, I mean, I pretend to be. So you and we played a good bit of Madden back in the day. And I know you have a memory like a steel trap. So what is one of your favorite memories of us playing Madden together?
Well, it's perfect timing that you bring this up during a segment where I'm talking about the Titans because I was playing as the Titans. Bobby was playing as the Packers, and I remember we were playing. I don't remember why I would remember that we're playing at Lambeau Field. And
you remember everything, Mike. Everything.
I do, right. All the useless stuff. I had a 28-24 lead in the closing seconds. Bobby's driving down the field. I said, okay.
A 4-point lead.
4-point lead.
4-point lead.
As long as he doesn't get in the end zone. As long as he gets, so he's managing the clock. He's getting down, using his timeouts, and then he goes to kick a field goal. And I said, wait a minute.
No, you didn't say anything.
No, in my head, I thought it. Wait a minute. I said, I probably set up for base defense at that point. Bobby still didn't notice. Right? I'm in the 4-3. I'm like, all right, he's probably just doing a fake. This is just some weird Bobby, mind trick. He kicks the field goal. He's celebrating. All right. I'm like, all right, we're both celebrating at the same time. And, a couple minutes later, he finally realized he lost 28-27. So
I thought I was down by 3. And I knew as soon as when I asked you this question, I knew you were going to bring up that memory. I knew that's what it was going to be.
Good memory.
I thought I was down 3. I kicked a field goal. I made it. I knew I'd win in overtime, except I was down 4 and dropped a big L.
Straight out of the Bill Belichick situational football playbook right there.
All right, man. So I had a question for you, but I'm changing it up real quick. So you were giving Mike Vrabel a lot of love there a couple minutes ago. So I'm going to hit you up with a question. If you're a general manager of an NFL team and you had your choice between Mike Vrabel, Sean McVay, who are you going to hire to coach your team?
I'm going with Vrabel.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, to me, Vrabel he's got that old school. He's a defensive-minded guy. And you know what? When he went up against Belichick in the playoffs, Vrabel won that coaching battle. When Sean McVay did it, not only did he not win that coaching battle, he admitted afterward, hey, I got scared. I outsmarted myself. So just for that reason alone.
All right. Yeah. I just came – I had something else for it.
Sean McVay.
Yeah.
Brian hates him.
I don't like Sean McVay. So, yeah, I figured I didn't know how you would take that one, but I mean, I know you were giving Vrabel a lot of love. So
You did good in Brian's book, that's for sure.
I can't.
No.
There's no argument from my end. So yeah, I'll take it.
Mike Seff, you're the man. Thanks a lot for coming on, buddy.
Hey, thank you, guys. I'm having fun doing this.
All right, man. Thanks
Incredible
for coming on.
knowledge as always.
All right. Talk to you guys soon.
We'll have you on soon.
See you, man.
See you, man. All right, another. Mike is like our. He's like the bullpen pitcher. He just comes in. And,
yeah, that's right. He's like, we need to bring in the lefty.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give him. Who did he cover last time? He covered the Bengals. This time we gave him.
Yeah.
I mean, we gave him the AFC losing team, the AFC championship losing team. I mean, so we stepped the game up a little bit. So
it's like 3 hours before the show. We're like, hey, Mike, you feel like coming on and talking about the Titans? Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, good stuff.
All right, hey, great show. Again, we're coming to you from Naughty Dog Brewery, Winterville, North Carolina. Awesome spot. Get out here if you're anywhere in the neighborhood. Fantastic outside place. Lots of great drinks, sodas, like I said, always. And obviously drinks for the grown-ups as well. And the staff is so friendly. They're so great. And they're so nice to me. And I'm supposed to already be out of here, but they're letting me stay late. So we got to get rolling. They're turning out the lights.
All right.
And we, when we start Music by Dunson, as always, check him out, Spotify or, YouTube, wherever you find that stuff. He's the man.
Yep. Good stuff. Yep. This post will be on Podbean, Apple Podcast, Facebook tomorrow morning. Then maybe on Friday we'll post another picture of our shirts so we can. Maybe sell a few more of those.
I'm telling you, I rolled up in here when I was setting up today, and there were people downloading Podbean and following our podcast left and right. So
yeah, man, good stuff. We'll talk about it next week. We'll have on. I don't know. We'll see. We're working on some big stuff, but it's summertime, so the scheduling is hard to figure out. So we'll have another good show next week, and comment, like, share, post, repost, all our stuff, and we appreciate it. So, yep. See you next week.
See you, folks. See you, Brian.
All right, man.